I will be moderately ticked off if we don't get a valid recording out of either of these.
That would be annoying.
Start the game already!
Dude.
The cloud is famously temporary and ephemeral. I'm talking, of course, of literal clouds.
Yeah, obviously. What are you on, drink number 4?
It's number 3, so this
Number
one
3?
could get a little interesting.
What are you into?
So, more of the stuff that my wife brought back from Whitewater Brewery. This is Blood Orange Sour. I do have to say that in the previous, probably unaired episode, because it was a little bit non-standard, I was drinking pumpkin spice espresso stout.
Porter?
Pumpkin spice porter. Yeah, pumpkin spice espresso porter. And I didn't hate it.
No, I had that pumpkin porter a couple weeks back, and it was okay.
It's okay. I mean, the pumpkin was a like really a very much a background note, and it was pleasant at that level. So, what have you got on the go?
I am drinking something that actually almost looks similar in terms of logo, not similar at all in terms of what it is, and that is some White Claw black cherry.
Claw.
Black cherry sparkling hard seltzer. I don't know. Saw something different. It's a recognizable brand name of something I wouldn't normally drink, and I have never had it before. I hear people talking about it all the time, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, I'll get it.
Yeah, I find that quite frequently those seltzers don't have a great deal. Like, I prefer in your face flavor profiles. Famously, White Claw is a thing that college girls drink because it doesn't taste like, like whiskey, which, quite frankly, if you haven't developed a taste for it, is awful. I don't mind them. They're not really my bag, but I think they're fine.
Yeah, it's pretty mild.
I find them, for me, they're almost flavorless.
How much alcohol does it actually have?
4.5, usually 5.
See, I could see them being dangerous just because you don't taste any real alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing you could drink like soda.
Yes, you very much can. Yeah.
Maybe that says something about college girls that we probably don't want to explore.
Nope, we absolutely do not. Not anymore. I'm exhausted just like the little bit we've talked about it. I'm exhausted.
So, we're officially calling it Nerd Fights Round 1 a tie. We ended up with the same number of likes, and I think our view count for our videos was within 1 or 2 of each other. So, not enough to declare a winner, and that's probably the perfect way for round 1 to go.
I'm perfectly happy with that. I thought both entries were very strong in different ways. You cheated, and so did I, so it's fine.
Now, I need to explain something to our listeners. Vital context, because I'm going to bully you into something.
Uh-oh.
We just recorded a whole thing about your world building in a sort of a tabletop game setting that you're working on, and you've kind of roped me into helping you out.
Absolutely.
I don't have a problem with that, but it was sort of a, hey, I'm volunteering you for this, and you'd be a real dick if you said no.
Well, when you frame it like that, that was exactly my intent.
So with that in mind, I'm proposing, because it's my turn to pick the format for Nerd Fights.
Okay.
And the number 1 item on my list, you would say no to normally.
Oh, no.
But in the context of you've just roped me into something, I'm going to say you can't say no to this. Or you better come up with a very, very good reason for it.
I'm old and I'm fat and I'm bald.
Doesn't matter.
All right.
The round 1 went well. I think the problem with it was that we were almost too good. Like, it was in our wheelhouse, And I don't mean
Fair.
too good as in like we produced something that was amazing. I thought they were both quite well done, but I mean, it wasn't a stretch. Like it was in our comfort zone.
That's fair.
Which made it pretty easy for us to devote way too much time to it, but also, produce something of reasonable quality.
Yep. Oh, so you want us to do something bad and embarrassing. All right, bring it on.
It's exactly what I want to do.
Oh, no.
So for those of you that missed round one, we pick a format. Then you're going to contribute with something like content-wise, and then I'm going to contribute something else. So we end up mashing things together. Round one, the format that Telson picked was a intro to a D&D one-shot or small campaign. A little spiel that a dungeon master does in preparation for kicking off games. Then I said, okay, but let's make it noir detective. And then Telson said, but the world is entirely inhabited by anthropomorphic animals.
Furries.
And we produced 2 videos recorded independently, kind of a friendly competition with that criteria in mind, and threw them online on our YouTube channel where you guys can watch them and like them, and depending on like count and stuff, that's how we choose a winner, and we managed a tie. So for Nerd Fights round 2, this is no longer a proposition. This is what we're going to do. Can you guess it?
Nope. I have
You
no
and
clue.
I are going to write and record a bard song.
Oh, no.
So think D&D bards, think Jaskier, Dandelion from The Witcher. One instrument, no cameras. We'll do it over a static screen. Let's make this one song 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I'm not going to worry about the time limit because you're just going to ignore it anyway.
I was over by 10 seconds. And I was already talking at Micro Machines level.
So write less, condense, edit.
Can't.
Because it's a more complex thing, I'm going to say let's give ourselves a month to do it. So when I say bard music, I'm obviously talking about something that's kind of got that sort of minstrelly kind of fantasy bard thing, right? Appropriate for a D&D bard, or appropriate for anything bardish. I think we should know what that is. We don't need to like learn to play lutes and shit. Like, I know you play an acoustic guitar, not very often. It's been years since I've picked mine up, really. So that's fine for both of us.
I have a ukulele. It might get utilized. Oh,
I bought my wife a dulcimer for Christmas a couple of years ago. I might have to use that then if you're going to get into like bard appropriate instrumentation for this.
My wife actually has an auto harp.
I used to love playing those. My grandfather had one when I was a kid.
I think it needs some repair, so it might not get busted out for this. I would like to say that actually this is a little bit closer to in my wheelhouse than you might think.
Well, I knew it wasn't that big of a stretch. It's more of a like comfort level for public consumption stretch than it is, like I know you can play. I know you do some songwriting. I know you listen to all kinds of interesting shit. I wouldn't be surprised that you're like into bardcore. Do you listen to much bardcore?
I have a bardcore channel in my YouTube subscription list. Yeah.
So generally speaking, my understanding of bardcore is more that they take like contemporary-ish music, real songs, and do arrangements of them that sound like medieval sort of.
Typically, it's like Metallica, only we're going to play it on with a mandolin and a fiddle and a banjo in addition to the screaming guitars and massive drums. But yeah. It is
So-
very cool if it came across that I didn't think it was. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting, though, is that we do original songs
Okay.
in that style. We write them, we record them, sing them.
Okay. All right.
What do you want?
So
I'm now putting this back over to you. So I'm assuming you're going to pick a theme or topic or something for these songs. What do you have in mind?
Here's the thing. I think that rather than picking a theme or sort of something to narrow the thing down, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to forbid a couple of things.
Okay.
So you cannot describe. You cannot describe any womanly anything.
Okay. Be more specific.
So I'm talking about, how it's like her lips were like this and her eyes were like this and blah, 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 blah. It can't include any specific reference to a woman or a girl or any female person. And it cannot describe or be in any way about anything sexual.
Oh.
Right. This is where the bard thing becomes a little more difficult. So it can't be flowery romance, no love, no women.
Okay. That's interesting because like part of the appeal and charm of the bard stuff is, I mean, it tends to be sort of badly poetic.
Yes.
Like words don't fit together and they almost never rhyme, but it's an attempt at sort of flowery,
Seduction.
artful language.
Yes.
And it tends to get a little bit bawdy, right?
Right. That is the restriction, is it cannot be bawdy.
Ooh.
But I like it. I do. I really like this challenge.
Okay. No physical description, no sex, no romance.
No romance.
All right. So the one thing that most bard songs have is a message. There's and in fact, like often the bard music that we think about, it tells a story and often has an introduction. I'm going to sing you a song about this, and there's lessons to be learned as part of this. And then at the end of it, it sort of wraps it up with, here's the message you should have pulled for this and the things you should have learned and, the pitfalls you should avoid. And, whether it's about, the pitfalls of love or the, fall of whatever, like, bard song, no romance, women, love, sex. Because there needs to be a message, then I'll say that it needs to be about a person's hubris.
Ooh.
Or folly leading to their downfall. That's a very bard-like thing, right?
It is. Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you hadn't have gone with no romance or stuff, and it's perfect that you chose that, like I would have said, let's make this about like a person seducing a woman that turns into a beast and kills and eats them at the end, like a like a succubus or something like that, like, because that would be a sort of an obscene sort of next level take on what would be usual bard content. Yep. So a person's hubris or folly leading to their downfall without romance, relationship, sex, describing women or men from the woman's point of view. I guess that would apply.
Yes, it does. It cannot be bawdy or about romance or love at all.
Okay. One instrument, no camera, static ish display, similar to what we did the last time. Recorded, put on YouTube. Reasonable length, no set time limit, but let's not turn it into
it's
The
not
Wall or
Inagata
something like
Davida.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Although if I do choose a drum, there will be a drum solo. Oh, for everyone's information, I don't play the drums.
I have my cajon. I could pull that in there. And one more thing. This isn't me like interjecting any extra shit in here.
Okay.
I'm just going to reinforce the idea of a bard song. There's a very particular thing here. It's not just a person singing. Like there's a very
Frodo of the Nine Fingers
it's a
and the
style,
Ring
but
of Doom.
yeah. I think the most sort of recent example of bardy-like music that I think everybody's heard at this point is the "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher" song
Yes.
from The Witcher Season 1. But if you listen to the verses of that song, like it's telling a story about something that's happened, and it's using flowery language that it's not a song like we would write a song today. It is very much its own thing. And I think whereas we sort of were subtle in our first challenge in round 1 about some of the things that we were dealing with, we want to be explicitly bard here. We're writing like a bardy, minstrelly, flowery, that type of language song.
I would like to add one little bit of clarification to my my stipulation about no description of women. Specifically, I mean nothing like, rosy lips and eyes blue like the ocean, yada, yada, yada. It's perfectly fine to describe a woman in a non-sexual romantic way.
Sure.
Like describe your mom, fine.
Yeah, like if you're talking about the Fellowship of the Ring or something like that, like
Yes.
these heroes or adventurers that group together and their folly led to their downfall. You have to be able to describe these individuals, but the context in which you're describing them is
by character is
romantic.
fine. Yes, it's not like the physical description isn't there. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay.
I dig it. I have to say, I'm actually surprised at how little resistance you had to the idea.
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I had no idea where that was going, and I love where it ended up.
Now I'm excited.
All right. Do you want to just end now and go do it?
Yeah, let's go do it. No, I think we had some stuff we actually wanted to talk about. Before we do, though, let's just wrap up the nerd fights thing. Is there any lessons learned, sort of things that you just want to do differently this time?
One of the things is definitely to start a little bit earlier. I mean, that for me, that was like I wrote the script the morning of, and like read it and pulled all of the things in. Oh, I would like to point out that we should probably have maybe a slightly different tune for each of our things. Like if you watch both of our videos, they literally use the same background music.
Well, we're not going to be searching for music for this. I assume we're going to actually noodle our own songs, so we should end up with something different. It's going to be similar, right? Like I mean, the minstrelly kind of bard you can only stretch it so many different ways, but
it would be amusing if we both came up with exactly the same key, the same chords, and the same timing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but it would be funny.
Yeah, but 4 weeks, I think. Like rather than trying to do this all in a week, I think we get a month. You probably got to buy strings for your guitar if you're going to use it.
I have a package of strings that I'm not sure if they're any good. They've been sitting in the case now for
17 years.
Maybe 5 years. I mean, I do noodle around on my guitar like a couple of times a week, but
well, then you pick it up more than I do, so you might actually have an advantage.
I might.
I picked it up for about a week, just like all told, it was maybe a half an hour of actually playing before that staff event that we had that was going to turn into a jam session in the summer. And then I put it back in the bag, brought it home, and it is sitting in the same spot that I put it down. Like, I haven't even
I
put it
need
back in
to
storage.
actually somewhere over there. I have a bunch of guitar hooks. You couldn't see it in the old place because they actually hung on the wall
Mhm.
here. But I have a 1980s Mako, which is a Japanese Fender Telecaster ripoff,
Mhm.
which apparently is a really expensive guitar. I don't know. I bought it when I was 18 for like $50. I have a Stratocaster, which I have since learned is a fake because the serial number has too many digits in it. I have my acoustic guitar. I have my mom's acoustic guitar, which is in tune on any given string, but never all of the strings at the same time. And the neck has a significant twist in it. But I mean, it's my mom's old guitar, right? So it hangs on the wall. And I have a mandolin, which has someone else's name on it. Or sorry, not a mandolin. Tiny Tim and Tiptoe Through the Tulips. What the heck is it called? I just said it a second ago. Tiny 4-string guitar. Ukulele.
Ukulele.
Good Lord. I might be a little drunk. I am under the influence. Let's nerd.
All right. Well, let's talk about some video games.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
Stay a while and listen.
I have a whole thing here, but before I get into it, I would like to hear how things are going with you in your playthrough, your 17th half playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3.
18th. I started again. I couldn't. Okay, so here's the thing. I would like to praise the voice actors who have done the characters in Baldur's Gate. I got to the point where I was able to get to the sort of climactic romance scene with Karlach. And it felt so real. I had to, because Cindy was traveling at the time, I actually had to call my wife and apologize. I'm like, I phrased it like this. And she listens to this, by the way. She doesn't listen to all of the episodes, but she does occasionally listen to these, so she might be listening. So once again, honey, I'm sorry, because it felt so real. It literally felt like I was cheating on my wife. So I started another playthrough because honestly, I wasn't quite happy with my avatar either. I know you can respec, so the class thing wasn't a problem. It was like I was unhappy with my avatar, so I went back and started again. This time I'm going through as a bard and basically doing everything that Lae'zel will like. I would like to say that I am upset that my playthrough is bugged and I cannot cure Lae'zel's infirmity after she gets debuffed permanently. It's not really a big deal. The intelligence and the wisdom I don't really care about. It's not super important, but the constitution debuff is just a kick in the nads, you know?
So you made it far enough in that previous playthrough then to deal with
Karlach's issue, yeah.
Lae'zel, right? The
She's the
maybe I'm confusing. No, but you were talking about her debuff.
Oh yeah, I did the crash. I got to the towers on my previous playthrough. And this playthrough I have just finished the crash. Mm-hmm. And I'm about to go into the Underdark. I'm playing on Tactician this time too because I found that the combat was just a hair too easy. And I'm still not finding it really hard. Like once you lean into not hoarding potions and scrolls, right? Like there's lots of stuff. It's just like there's so many options. It's a really great game. I'm enjoying it a ton. I'm probably playing like 2 or 3 hours most nights. I'm on. It's not my 18th playthrough, but it might be the third time I've gone all the way through most of Act 1. And this one I'm on 32 or 33 hours.
So in your playthroughs of Act 1, aside from your character stuff and interactions with your party members, have you chosen significantly different paths for handling things like the Goblin Stronghold? And
Not significantly, no. I've done some things in slightly different order. I have killed some people that I negotiated with previously. I've intimidated some people that I previously sort of tried to persuade. So I've sort of come to the same conclusion in a lot of interactions, but gotten to that point slightly differently. There's a lot of things that are kind of like illusion of choice, right? Like, do you persuade them or do you intimidate them? And it might have impacts later, I don't know, but a lot of times you end up at the same point in the conversation, regardless of how you get there, as long as you succeed on the check. But yeah, I mean, there's a few things, and there's a few interactions that have been slightly different. Right. There's I think that there's a little bit of randomness in there in the reaction you get from people sometimes. One of the things that I have discovered is that you can skip every vase. Like, you literally might find like a gold piece in a vase, like 1 out of 1,000 of them.
Yeah, I got to the point where generally, if I didn't see text when I hit the Alt key, and I'd just like hold Alt as I was walking around, if it didn't have text, yet it was something I could open, I'd never bothered. Like all the wooden crates and all the. Generally, it seemed like if it had something in it that was worth looking at, and I'm sure that I missed some interesting Easter eggs or some interesting items that, you know, are intentionally hidden and there as a reward for people that literally loot everything. But I don't feel like I missed anything that lessened my experience.
Probably not.
So
there's a few, most of the sort of things that I've found by looking in strange places and looting everything were references to the first or second game. And most of the ones to to Baldur's Gate 2 go right over my head because I literally never played it. I got to the point, I think, of character creation even the first time I played Baldur's Gate 2. I still do. Once I finish with this, I'm probably going to go back and play Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 again, because I've never finished either of them. And as I just said, I've never really even played Baldur's Gate 2. It's interesting to see, like, to know the little bits of what I know about how it finishes from this game. I had seen spoilers before as well, but it's a great game. It's fun. But you have a thing.
I do have a thing. I've been playing Starfield, and the TLDR, it's okay. Yeah. But the discussion here is, I wish I hadn't just played Baldur's Gate 3. Or I wish I hadn't recently done a playthrough of Cyberpunk. Or, you know, like if I just played Starfield and I hadn't played, like if it was, I don't know, 2014 and I was playing Starfield, or what would have been possible to play that was as close to this as possible, I'd be like, this is a pretty amazing game. But the bar has been raised so much, and it opens up sort of an interesting discussion about, like, when did pretty good become not good enough?
Recently, I think.
Like, I remember playing games, like, we used to just play games because, hey, I haven't played this game yet, back in the day.
We did a lot of them.
And we'd be like, oh, hey, you know what? This game is pretty good. It's got some obvious flaws, and there's some things I don't like about it, and it's not as good as this other game, but yeah, it's pretty good, and I'm enjoying it. And I don't want to say that I'm not enjoying my playthrough of Starfield, but having just played Baldur's Gate 3 and recently another playthrough of Cyberpunk and hell, The Witcher 3, even, like, so going back to 2015. I mean, that is the game I think that really raised the bar for me. And it's some subtle, trivial things, right? Obviously, quality voice acting and mocap. You know, when you have conversations and with your main sort of characters, the side characters and stuff, whether it's Keanu Reeves or whatever. In Cyberpunk, like there's mocap work that's done. The if you remember how the old Bethesda games like Skyrim and Oblivion and even Morrowind worked, like you'd have a conversation, you'd start a conversation, and then zoop, camera moves. You just got a head right in front of you. You're looking straight on, and it starts talking. And the rigging on the it isn't mocap, like it's very clearly just sort of some basic rigging that is kind of doing its thing with the words. It's timed well. Like it isn't, it doesn't look like you're watching a dubbed movie or anything, but it just clearly lacks the appropriate expressiveness and subtle
The
things like just
eyes.
cinematic camera angles. Like I think about Mass Effect, like even the first game, but especially the second one. So much could be achieved by just taking that camera that is behind me and just going, "Rih,"
Whoop. Yeah.
or "Rih," and just, hey, actually, you know what? Let's just move it here and let's have the character just not stand straight up and talk to you like this.
They're leaning on something.
They're leaning on something. They've got their hand on something. Hands are on their waists. They're moving. They're walking. We're having a conversation while we're walking. Like those things don't happen in Starfield. And again, if I hadn't played the superior games where this shit happens, like Witcher 3 and Hell Horizon Zero Dawn,
The conversations in Horizon Zero Dawn were really good.
Yeah, and I wouldn't notice it as much, but because I do. And the dialogue is another thing that's just.
Do you remember a game called It Came from the Desert?
I remember the title. I'm not sure that I ever played it.
It was a game. It came out on the PC, but I played it on Amiga, and it was actually something that was in our, oh God, I want to say grade 10 or 11 art class.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because it was an example of what you can do with digital art. And it was like, there was a thing that you got when we bought the Amiga 500. It was like, Face Painter 5000 or something. And it had these sort of proto faces. It was almost like a sketch artist kind of program,
mm-hmm.
right? Where you've got like, here's a skull and you can sort of change the shading around the eyes to make them deeper and so on and so forth. But there's no eyes there. It's just like skinless face, right? Like nightmare face, no
Mm-hmm.
mouth, no nose, no, just sort of like fleshy lumps. And then you'd say, well, put these eyes on it. It would go boop, and it would put them in the right place. And you can do, and it was very much like a character creator from a modern game.
Mm-hmm.
But It Came from the Desert used that art in the game. And the reason that it came to mind is because you're talking about the difference between mocap and not. And this was literally, you could see that this was from that sort of face sculptor program. And when people were talking, there was like sort of 4 positions that their mouth could go in, right? It was like open, or it was O, or it was like, tongue hitting the teeth, or a little bit of a smile. And it would just cycle through these 4 things and sort of like morphing stuff. It was a great game, by the way. It was, Ants Invade from the Desert or whatever. And there was a bunch of similar games. Like It Came from Space, but they were all basically like Space Quest or King's Quest or whatever, click on a thing. And like, I remember it being very good. I don't want to go back and play it again because it will end up being very bad. But anyway, not super important. But the sort of standing there and just talking, dialogue and writing is so important, and Larian did such a good job with Baldur's Gate 3. There's some stuff that just doesn't make sense because like the dialogue tree is just way too big. But most of the things, it's like, oh, that's an interesting response.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you're talking to
a person,
like fleshed out people. What I find with Starfield, and again, I'm enjoying playing the game. So these are more than nits, These are what take a game that's like, yeah, it's fine. It's it's pretty good to could have been excellent, but the dialogue, I don't know if maybe they were understaffed and they had their quest writers and quest designers also write the character dialogue. Like, that's what it feels like. Honestly, it actually feels like they had all of the dialogue for all of the characters written by a 10-year-old with like an adult level vocabulary.
Oh no.
Like it's I
Does
know
it
AI would actually do it better. Like, I know it's not done by AI because AI would actually do it better. It's just
does it sound like conversations in Piers Anthony books?
the only Anthony books I've read were the Incarnations of Immortality, and that's some of the better stuff. So, like, I didn't read a lot of Xanth or any of the other stuff. So, maybe like I was intentionally going to, in one of my campaigns, create characters that spoke like this. And the reason for it is they were going to be aliens. They were going to be, I think I've told you about it before, and that little Mass Effect inspired sort of, wasn't going to be a one shot. It was going to be sort of a little mini campaign thing, but we kind of abandoned it. I was going to create a fictional race of aliens called the Neil Breen that were based on, like, they were all Neil Breens. And the reason for it is the way I described Neil Breen is, imagine something trying very, very, very hard to act and sound like a human being, but not quite pulling it off.
And that's a good description of Neil Breen.
Right.
Oh man.
Like, there's a lizard or an insect under that skin somewhere, and he's almost like,
sugar in water.
Yeah.
More.
He might convince some people, but he hasn't convinced me.
I don't think he's human.
That's what a lot of the character dialogue in this feels like. It's juvenile in some ways, and not juvenile enough. Like, there's another game that you obviously compare this game to, and that's No Man's Sky. Just because it was a sort of a big space game, and like, it was incredibly juvenile. Like, it actually, the first playthrough I struggled with it a bit, but they leaned into it, and then it was like, okay, well, it's kind of charming, I guess, in its own way. Where, this game is basically No Man's Skyrim, and but it's in that weird mushy middle ground where it's trying to explore some sort of adultish themes, but do it in a way that doesn't feel adult, and there's a sort of naivete and just sort of an unearned kind of weird trust thing that just has saturated everything so far in this game. I don't know, I'm like 10 or 15 hours into it, but it's just weird. And then the structure of the things, like, it's like they have a bucket list. And again, this is why I wonder if it was the quest designers that actually wrote the dialogue, because it's like, you can tell that they want this to happen and this to happen and this to happen. And like, as long as you hit the right dialogue prompt, it happens. And it's kind of annoying. You start, and I'm not gonna, no big spoilers here. But you start the game and you're like a miner, right? And you find this artifact, and then typical sort of video gamey thing, something happens, you get visions. Kind of like when you find the Prothean beacon in the first Mass Effect game. You don't know what they mean, and then somebody else who was spying the artifact comes down, and he sees that it's affected you, and he's like, "You're my best friend now. Why don't you take my spaceship and join this organization that I'm in?" It's just like, fuck, I'm a miner. You've known me for 30 seconds. You're giving me your spaceship, which is worth a bajillion credits. Why? Why would a human being do any of this? And then I go to the organization, and they're just like, "Oh, you're the newest member of the team, and here's a key to our lodge." And it's, what? Again, it's just like how a child would almost write stuff. Like, just watch the Red Letter Media episode on Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yep.
And one of the things about that movie is, like, it's a fantasy world that's a little bit weird, as if it was written from the perspective of a child, where you just got this really, really weird dude, but everybody loves him. and the whole world is appropriate for this sort of
It's through the
Pee-wee
lens
centered thing.
of Pee-wee. It's through the lens of Pee-wee's perception of the world, and he thinks everybody loves him, so everybody loves him.
Right. And this almost
That's
feels like that, except that you don't have Pee-wee.
it sounds an awful lot like when a kid writes a story, it's almost like wish fulfillment, right? Like there's those things on the internet where they're on, is it 4chan with the green text and the red text, and you've got Frogman. What the hell's his name? Pepe.
Mhm.
On the sides, like, Beanie, blah, 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 standing in line at so and so. And then I said something and everybody clapped.
Mhm.
Right? It has that same kind of vibe where it's like everything that I do is awesome.
Yeah. And I could
You need to
live
earn
with
it.
that. I could live with that. But then they do things, and again, this isn't a real spoiler. There's one sort of quest with one of the characters in this organization that you get tangled up with where you got to go to his home planet, and he's kind of a cowboy. And you learn in getting there that you're going to have to talk to his father, but he's had a falling out that's going, decades and decades back. They hate each other. They don't talk to each other. It's a rift that, but you need something that he has.
So cowboys, yeah.
So we go there and they immediately start snipping at each other, right? Like, oh, blah, blah, I'm not going to get this map. Just get out. I'm never going to give it to you. So then you have a conversation with your cowboy and he's like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. We'll have to figure something out. One of my options in dialogue is, well, I can talk to him if you'd like. Okay, well, I thought there's the persuasion mechanic in this game. But you've set up this history of enmity between these two characters. Like, it's not something that I can just say, hey,
you should get along now.
Yeah. And I go and I talk to his dad and I literally say one or two of the persuasion options. And he's like, fine, just take the map. And then we leave. Like, it isn't like there's more there. Like, I could accept that if that was part one of a whole bunch of things that had to go on here. But it was like, I had this conversation. He's like, fine, just take the map and get out of here. And it's like, I guess we're done here now. Like,
yeah. It's a weird kind of a thing. One of the things that they harp on Red Letter Media a lot is setup and payoff, right? And for a long time, I had an issue with that, right? Like I feel like in any kind of complex story, it's fine to set things up that never pay off, as long as they're not, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I'm setting something up here, right? But it's not something that you want to do with big, like, because that sounds like a plot point, right? You would think that, okay, well, they don't get along, but at some point in the like, we have to come back to that. We have to, okay, now he's proven himself and his dad's grudgingly accepting, and then they go on an adventure together, and the treasure is the friends we made along the way, or something, right? You figure that's what a story is.
And like, maybe some of that'll happen later, but the way it's set up right now, it's very much like, we went to this planet for a reason that had nothing to do with his dad. We realized the thing that we were coming for, his dad anticipated that we might want it, so we took it. And now we got to deal with his dad. And I had one conversation that basically said, yeah, but you're being a bit of a dick, aren't you? And he's like, fine, take the map. And it's like, get out. I don't ever want to see you again. And that's it. Like, there was no development of what was set up. Why go to the trouble of setting that stuff up? Like, when you do set up and payoff, it isn't, I set something up and then I immediately pay it off.
No, agreed. But, and there's times when setups, I think, should be ready. It comes into this sort of leads into some of the things that we've talked about with Table Talk as well. And there's two things here. Is that, number one, like, you're foreshadowing something maybe, but number two is, like, what are the consequences if you fail?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what if you're unable to convince his dad to give you the map, and that, as you say, it might be the quest writers are writing the dialogue, because they're like, you have to fail forward here. You need this
Mm-hmm.
map to progress, or the story doesn't happen. So, like, Is it a make the persuasion roll or the story's over? I guess he gives you the map no matter what.
And I ran into, I made the mistake. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if I'd chosen a different character, but I thought, you know what? Like, I will have a charming sort of space, not scoundrel. Like, I'm not going to play somebody who's potentially a bad guy or even like a Malcolm Reynolds type character, but I wanted to have that sort of space cowboy-ish charm, right? So there was
Right.
a particular thing that I could choose where it's like I have, a bit of a bonus to persuasion, kind of like playing a bard in D&D.
Right.
And there's another completely, like, it's all part of this main quest line, but there's another series of quests where, like, after everything felt really easy, like, go to this point, talk to this guy, then go talk to this guy, then go get this one thing, like simple scavenger hunt. There was another quest series where it's like they almost, in a meta way, were like, yeah, this is going to be easy, and then it, everything falls apart, almost calling attention to the fact that the rest of the quests that I've done have been kind of linear shit at this point. And you end up in a situation where you're having to sneak into somebody's building, or you got to convince your way to talk to them or something. It's like a competitive business, dude. And I went to the receptionist, and in 100+ persuasion-y type checks I've done, it's the only time I've ever failed where it's like, I've got a meeting, he's expecting me, and I failed. And she said, nope, you can't see him. And then, like, there's a door to a security office right beside her. And as I walk past the door, I see the little thing for executive security badge or something like that. That's just going to get me in to see him, like, right there. It's like, failed my persuasion check. Plan B. Like, it could have just had a sign like Plan B right above it. Right? Like, there was no, oh shit, what do I do now? It was literally, oh, hey, there's a door there. Oh,
there's some amount of like, I wonder sometimes, like, for example, I'm finding like, I joined the Baldur's Gate subreddit. I'm not sure if that was a good idea. But I see a lot of complaints about how, oh God, the combat is so hard. Like, I'm playing on regular and I'm getting wiped, like, often. And I'm thinking, like, how? Right? Like, I'm playing on tactician and it's
to be
easy.
fair, I imagine most of these people have progressed through, part of the game.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yes, and that was actually my next point, is that you can actually do things like skip enough things that you're underleveled for where you're going. But I also
Well, it wasn't
wondered,
even the underleveling. It's just that, like, the significance of the environment and a lot of the
Yeah.
player content leads to a lot of the challenging combat in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, you can just be hosed by placement of your characters when combat starts. Like, you definitely ran into a lot of situations where it's like, oh, it's in combat.
Oops.
I've got one person that's, high up in the initiative order, and he can't do much. And then 3 people are being shoved over a cliff, or something to that effect.
Yeah, there is a little there. That's the one thing about Baldur's Gate 3 that I don't like, is that there's a little bit too much bonus action, instant death. Right?
Yeah.
Like, shove is a bonus action, and I don't have a problem with that. That makes combat a little bit more interesting sometimes. There's been a couple of times where I've set something on fire and then had 3 successive characters push a boss into the fire. It's like, push, not far enough, push, not far enough, push. Now they're on fire. What was I going to say? But I wonder how much of this is like, there are, like, I especially see this now with a lot of TV shows, is that people are writing and probably designing games for the lowest common denominator, because, and I don't mean this to sound gatekeepery, but, like, you have to make sure that everyone can get there, right? Which means that reasonably clever people like yourself are going to see that and go, oh, okay, well, this is how I get there from here. And there are people who will miss that.
Yeah, and
And is there a plan C? Like, that's really, look for plan C. Does that exist? That might be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, and I mean, that one particular instance, maybe I can forgive that. That certainly hasn't been, because I've been nailing most of my persuasion checks. I haven't noticed a lot of that. Oh, my persuasion check didn't work. I guess it doesn't matter because plan B's right there beside you. That was just the one instance that really, really stood out for me, where it's just, oh, you're not going to let me into his office, but his office key is right there.
Yoink.
Pay no attention to me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird. Like I noticed, going back to the first Mass Effect game, I started before I got into Baldur's Gate. I started partway into Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, and I realized how much of that game I look back through like rose-tinted nostalgia goggles.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's still an amazing game, but some of the mechanics of questing in particular now stand out, as there's a lot of go to a location, talk to one person once about a thing, and now you can leave that location and go to another location and get one item and then leave that location.
Yep.
And now that first Mass Effect game released on the original Xbox, like that's what, 2007? I don't know when it came out, the game itself, but
I don't know.
like,
Before
it's
we had electricity, I
like,
think.
I can forgive the first Mass Effect, and the later games in the Mass Effect series were a lot better. What Starfield, ironically enough, reminds me a lot of is Mass Effect Andromeda, which is a game that a lot of people really didn't like. Again, not because it was a terrible game. It had launch issues and, weirdness, kind of like almost any game does. But it was a game that was sort of rushed to completion. There was some studio drama. They had sort of this big thing in mind, and they had to scale it way back, and yada yada yada. If I'd never played a Mass Effect game and played Mass Effect Andromeda, I would have gone into that game and said, you know what, that's a really good game. Yeah. Not great, but more than good enough. But I've played Mass Effect 2. I've played Mass Effect 3. So the fact that it was a Mass Effect game hurt it. And the fact that it was like, we're going to do something new. We're going to a different galaxy. We're not, it's not the heroes that you're used to from this trilogy. This is the spin-off. Like, that hurt it in and of itself. But then the fact that it, didn't deliver on the high bar that was set changed how you perceived the game. I think, honestly, like, if it hadn't have been called Mass Effect, most people would have played it and said, yeah, this is pretty good. But in the context of having just played Baldur's Gate 3, having experienced Cyberpunk, and a lot of people, didn't like how Cyberpunk launched, but it was still a really good game, and what it did well, it nailed.
I didn't have any problems really with Cyberpunk, honestly.
Oh, no, they're just the silly
bugs.
Stuff, right? Bugs, yeah. the incomplete systems, like, how the police worked, and the one thing that like stands out to me in Cyberpunk is like you're walking in these busy streets that are completely empty. Like there's people moving around, but there's nothing to do. There's all of these doors that are actual objects in the game that you can tell at some point in their plan there was something that was supposed to be here, because it's not just wall texture. It's a door that when you hover over it says locked, but you just can't unlock it and do anything with it. And their original promise was this big sort of thing where around every corner there was something that you could do,
and I mean, that could still happen, maybe, but probably not.
No.
It's the return on investment is not enough for the money guys. I would like to say that the streets in my Cyberpunk game were quite crowded.
Crowded, yes, of people, lots of duplicate people, crowded,
oh, yes.
But nothing to do. You weren't interacting with them. You could walk up and down a full street. There would be no quest stuff. There'd be no items. There's shit going on around you, but it's window dressing,
And that's not necessarily bad. I would like to say though that I wonder if the idea of video games as quest simulators is played out, and we need some new kind of idea about what video games are, because there's so many, and like there's really, like, how many different kinds of quests are there? I think there's like 3. You know, go talk to a person, go get a thing, which are almost the same quest, or escort this person from here to there. So there's like
Mhm.
there's talk, there's delivery, and there's delivery of people, right? Or kill a thing, I guess, is another
Mhm.
one. But they're all basically the same thing. Like, go here and do a thing, come back and tell me you've done it.
Mhm.
And I wonder if it isn't time for some other idea.
And there are other genres, right? Like you
Yes,
have your
for
your
sure.
rogue and roguelites, you have your platformers, you have like, nobody complained about a Mario game. Not, and I think actually the newest
Oh,
one coming out like actually has quests and shit. But like, it's just an example off the top of my head of a game where it's like I don't have a narrator telling me go here, get this thing, do this thing. I'm just kind of set down in the world. I have sort of an objective, right? Find the princess or whatever, and I
yep,
just keep going until I do it. And in the meantime, I've got all of these sort of immediate challenges as
yep,
platformers tend
yep,
to have that.
yeah.
And I don't know, like in I don't know how you can do a role playing game differently.
I don't either.
You
I'm
know,
not saying that, like,
in
oh,
a
they
way
should do
that
it
is
this way.
technically feasible. Like, the issue when I say technically feasible, like in real life, I can, interact
Make
with the
stuff up.
world without objectives, right? I can go have random conversation with a random person if I so choose. I don't need anything to do there. There's nothing prompting me to do it. It's just like, oh, there's a guy. Let me talk to them, see what they have to say, kill a couple of hours. But unless you're like completely procedurally generating with like AI and shit the entire game, there's just no way as a developer you can
No,
build that game, right?
no, for certain not that. But I'm just wondering, because I mean, we went from eat little yellow dots and run away from ghosts to have conversations with people about what kind of stuff they want you to fetch. Right, and there's a shift in, like, what does it mean to be a game.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if we're not due for another one of those, where suddenly we go from, okay, well, we had platformers and then we had shooters and like first person. Because remember, like, I remember when first person shooter was like a holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
They were what the heck is it, Wolfenstein clones, or Doom clones. They were all
Mm-hmm.
Doom clones. And now it's basically like they're all Zelda clones. And I mean, I'm not all, but you know what I mean. Like, we
Yeah.
have all these RPGs that are that style of game. I wonder if it's time for someone out there to go, hey, what if we did this instead? And I
Yeah.
wonder if there's room for that, because
I wonder if there's like there's games that innovate. There's some games that have some really neat shit going on. They tend to be indie games, and almost
yes,
nobody plays them, which probably speaks to maybe the general mass does not want that style of game. They want,
I
you know,
think they might,
they
but
want Madden 2023 and
they do.
2024, and they
They
want,
do, but a lot
Call
of
of
that
Duty
is
72.
that's what the what would you call them, the producer type thing. What's the my brain is not processing words anymore. Um, you have the developer, and then you have the people who actually send the game out. Like, Microsoft doesn't actually
Yeah.
make games; they publish them.
Studios do the development, and then you have the publishers that do the publishing.
Yeah. So, like, the publishers aren't going to publish games that don't have a massive return, and the massive return comes a lot of times by advertising things and generating hype for it. Like, the amount of hype that came out for Cyberpunk is largely responsible, I think, for all most of the negative reaction that people had to it, was like, 'cause the hype for it was just unreal, and the
Mm-hmm.
game was fine. Like, there was nothing wrong with the game. It didn't live up to the hype, because nothing can. I mean, sex doesn't live up to that much hype. So video games are not going to.
But I'll ask you a couple of questions. What game are you playing now?
Baldur's Gate 3.
What game did you play before Baldur's Gate 3?
I think I was playing Cyberpunk before that. Like, don't get me wrong, the AAA games are good, right? I'm not going to suggest.
Well, I'm not
that
even
we
talking
shouldn't.
AAA. I'm just talking about, you have a particular type of game that you like to play. The quest stuff that you're suggesting we maybe need to find an alternative for, like 76 years of playing EverQuest.
I mean, EverQuest does not have quests in it.
It's right in the
contrary to
name.
the name. But you don't do quests. You literally just go out and kill goblins until your thing goes ding, or until it drops a shiny. And I'm not suggesting that quests are played out or wrong or bad or anything.
No, you just.
I'm thinking like it's like we're due for a massive innovation. Mm-hmm. That's all. And you're right, indie games are definitely doing it, but AAA has definitely fallen into the same thing that Hollywood has, which is, well, we need to bring back the A-Team because that was popular.
Well, yeah, and it's I actually just watched a Chris Stuckman video talking about, was it Crater, a new movie that just came out. Gareth Edwards, the guy that directed Rogue One, and supposed to be a pretty good movie, but the one thing that people complain about is it feels like a million other things that have been done, and the reason for that is this is a movie that costs more than $10 to make, and the only way you're going to get that money to make that movie is to do something that you can make the sales pitch to the studio. Well,
this is going to make $1 billion.
Yeah, because the last 10 people that did it made $1 billion.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's tough to take a risk in Hollywood. And same thing. I mean, like, I have no idea how many development hours went into Baldur's Gate 3, but I'll bet you it's on the order of millions of person hours.
Oh, I don't doubt that for a moment.
Yeah.
I might even think, yeah, like double-digit millions even.
Yeah, potentially. Because I mean, how long were they working on it? I remember hearing rumors about it like 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, the early access I think came out in 2020.
Okay.
So
at least 2 or 3 years prior to that.
Yeah. So it's been in the works for a while. It's probably been basically since they wrapped Divinity Original Sin 2. They've probably been going in on it pretty hard. But I mean, there's a story of them just like, they could have gone to Hasbro and say, hey, can you help us fund this game? And dealt with Hasbro saying, yeah, but we want you to do this. And yeah, but we want you to do that. They're like, nope, we're going to buy the license and we're going to do what we want to do. You have no decision-making power here. We've bought the license. Mm-hmm. We're making this game our way. We're distributing it ourselves. We're like it's
distributor. That's the word I was looking for earlier.
Okay. Yeah. It's so they didn't have to make those compromises, but what a risk. One of the interesting things that came out a couple weeks back, a bunch of the content that was submitted to the FTC with the shit going on about Microsoft buying or acquiring Acquisition Blizzard King. Some old documents that was just doing like Microsoft projections, and Baldur's Gate 3 came up when they were looking at games to consider buying exclusive rights for, or trying to make like Game Pass games or what have you. And they looked at Baldur's Gate 3 and they said, that's like third tier Google Stadia shit. Like that's never gonna turn into anything.
And this goes to show you, like I've dealt with C-suite executive type people, and I'll tell you what, when they're right, they're right. They're wrong way more often than they're right.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? I would not have guessed, as a person who, like, Baldur's Gate 3 is aimed at me. I am the target demographic for this game. I play Dungeons and Dragons. I used to play RPG games like this. I've played the first two. I'm amazed the game is as popular as it is, because it is everything that modern games isn't. Nobody
It's
does
slow.
turn-based anymore.
Oh my
Even the
God, I
games
love
that
it.
were notoriously turn-based, like Final Fantasy, have totally gone away from being turn-based, especially with the last 3 or 4 years. It is like a D&D RPG, which, none of that has really taken off. It
It's
is,
D&D flavored. It very much has the vibe of Dungeons and Dragons without the hardcore rule set. And there's a lot of custom items in it that really bend
okay, but
the
it
action
is
economy.
it
But yeah,
is
you're right.
it is
Yes.
more in the spirit of D&D than any game
Legends
that's
of the
come
Swords
before it.
Coast.
Well, then fuck even Neverwinter Nights, right? Like Neverwinter Nights borrowed some of the combat mechanics, and that was mostly it. Some settings, some world stuff, but it was all surface level. The fact that the other half of the system stuff that Larian managed to work it into the game in a way that felt worthwhile, that things like disguise self and hell doing persuasion checks and
Minor
all of
illusion.
that kind of shit, illusions, like a game like Neverwinter Nights or whatnot would have looked at that and said, okay, well, there's these 15 spells that we're just not going to use because you can't do those in a video game. Larian was like, actually, yeah, you can. And yeah, we had to make some adjustments here and there or whatever, but they
Dispel Magic
tried
got
and
left out.
mostly, yeah. Well,
Rightly so.
yeah, but they tried and mostly succeeded, and then made the calls that they needed to make to
I agree. I would actually make the case that some of the things that they changed for Baldur's Gate 3 need to make their way into the tabletop game.
yeah.
Shove as a bonus action? No. It's fun in a video game. In the tabletop? No.
Hey, do you want to do some more table talk?
Let's do table talk.
I originally had some topics here that I actually removed from the document, and then I saw that you wrote a bunch of stuff in.
I don't know about a bunch of stuff, but I have a couple of things. And seeing as we're a Baldur's Gate 3 podcast, we should probably continue talking about the things in Baldur's Gate 3 that I really like and want to bring into the tabletop idea of Dungeons and Dragons. And one of the things is the items that have synergies with player abilities. Um, One of the major sort of conflicts that people have about, especially about fifth edition, is the idea that like spellcasters have all of this utility. They can do all of these things. And the martial characters don't really have that much stuff to do. And I don't know if that's a fair criticism or not. It certainly hasn't been an issue in any game that I've DM'd or played in. I can see it though, right? People will put forward cases, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fair. But there's a lot of stuff that Larian has put into Baldur's Gate 3 where it's like, when you make an attack, this happens, and then you get lightning charges, and then these other things happen. And if you dash, you can do this, and if you jump, you can do that. And it makes things a little bit more complicated. To go back to a defense of fourth edition, there were a lot of things in fourth edition that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had stuff to do. Everything felt a little bit samey, right? It was like everybody has the same ability with slightly different flavor text. But there's something to be said for that as well, right? Where everyone can do a little bit of everything. And maybe some people are a little better at some things than others, but everybody can try it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, that's the point I have there.
Yeah, and I like the idea that in the game they there was a lot of items that felt like they were very, very specifically aimed at very, very specific builds, and if you
Yep.
weren't using them, then they were basically junk. If it's early enough in the game, you can feed them to one of your companions, but otherwise,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, specifically feed them to one of your companions.
And what I would say with that, if you're dungeon master, is don't be afraid of homebrewing stuff. I know that there's a lot of DMs and GMs out there that just, it's by the book. If you want items, it's got to exist in the source material, and they don't deviate from that when they're doling stuff out. And you're going to do a certain amount of that, but I think it's important to look at what your characters are and what they're trying to be, and give them stuff that is uniquely theirs, whether it enhances their specific abilities, whether it just adds flavor that's uniquely theirs, that, make it more than a piece of gear.
Yeah. Make it story relevant, ideally.
Now, yeah, and now you have to walk some fine lines, right? Like, what you don't want to do is give going back to the martial versus caster and utility thing. What you don't want to do is take that one martial character and have them all of a sudden making somebody else in that party irrelevant or redundant, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't give them something that then makes another character feel less special.
Right.
So you have to make the appropriate decisions, but give them something that does cool shit, that gives them utility. There's no reason that, your martial character can't be wielding a sword that has a unique magic effect that maybe isn't even, strictly speaking, combat. It's not doing more damage because it also does 2d6 fire if you hit, or anything like that. Like, it could have an effect. It could have an effect where it's confusing somebody, or this item can be used to allow you to charm a person,
or something.
Like, you don't have to make something up out of whole cloth either. You could just, like, look at the spells that you want to, like, I want to give a character a different way about doing this wizard shit. You don't even have a wizard in your party. There's a whole bunch of stuff that only wizards can do. Why don't you look at some of that and be like, oh, well, what if this person found an artifact that allowed them to do that with certain constraints or whatever?
If you make a flourish motion with your sword, you get advantage on your next deception check for anyone who saw you do it.
Yeah.
Something, anything, crazy stuff.
And don't be afraid to give your players something that makes them feel OP, because you can always up the difficulty level, right?
Yeah. Or they can lose it.
Yeah. Don't worry about action economy. Don't worry about all of that shit. Like, if things are too easy because of abilities and stuff that they have, just increase the difficulty.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta keep people a little bit even, but it doesn't have to be balanced. As long as nobody's falling behind.
So it may not go live because our recording platform is shitting the bed, but we just spent an hour and a half or so talking about a tabletop RPG setting that you and apparently I
Yes.
am going to be working on for a while. And you want to do it, sort of pair it up with a system that you've been developing. And we had an interesting conversation this week where you were talking about a new tabletop system. And I had to ask the question, like, yours? Because you were already working on something. And
I was. I'm not sure that it's ready for prime time exactly, and it wouldn't really be riveting content, especially for people who are just listening. But yeah, I've been playing with this idea of having sort of a simpler. I want to make it math simple, because one of the things about 5th edition that I don't like is that it's a little too easy to like, okay, I have a spreadsheet of 5 things and this is the most optimal everything. And at the same time, I don't want to go like the 4th edition route of, everything is the same. And every time we do combat, I have to keep track of, okay, this is +2 and that's -1, and this is +3 and that's -4, and this is +7 and that's -1, but that's -1 if he does this, but he didn't do that, so it's not -1, it's actually +1. So what was I at? Okay, let's start at the beginning again, right? And it's not like none of that is difficult, but it is tedious, and there's a lot of stuff to keep track of. So I wanted to. There's a couple of things that I wanted to sort of focus on. Number one is that there shouldn't be a lot of like math to do. It's not an accounting simulator. It's not a statistical, calculator simulator. So the whole thing is opposing dice rolls largely, but it's not roll this many dice and add them up. It's like Risk, where it's like you roll dice and I roll dice and we compare. And so this die beats your die and that die beats my die. So that's like 3 wins for me and 2 wins for you. So I win. And then any bonuses are you're allowed to add like +1 to a single die roll. Right. And that's the kind of level. It's like +1 or -1 to a single die roll. And that's kind of where I have no idea how it maths out. My plan is to do hopefully some play testing over the winter and see how that works out. I also wanted to lean into your idea of, as people become more tired, as they use their abilities more, as they take more damage, as they're more fatigued by combat, they become less effective. So I have kind of a system for that. Also, I also wanted to do something where it wasn't like, you pick a race and then you pick a class and you have an archetype, and your archetype can only do these things. So it's more of a skill-based system where it's like when you get some kind of advancement, you either improve a skill or you learn a new skill, or several skills, or you learn a spell, or you learn a magical ability, or what have you. One of the things that I wanted to do as well was sort of dovetail it into this setting that we were talking about earlier, where like the two of them kind of go together, but are easily divorced from each other or put into different places. I also wanted to do it so that I could write down all of the rules on like 2 sheets of paper. The idea of a role-playing system that comes in a pamphlet instead of a 79-page hardcover manual, that you need that manual in order to be a player, and then 2 other manuals in order to be dungeon master. So that there's one more sort of I don't know, call it a pillar, I guess. I'm stuck on the idea of the 3 pillars of adventure that Wizards of the Coast like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The other pillar here is that I want to take a little bit of the onus of creativity for items and abilities off of the GM, DM, storyteller, narrator, whatever you want to call them, and put it on the player. So the skill system is this: when you acquire a skill, or when you want to like level up and learn a skill, you make up the skill. You tell me what your skill does. So rather than I tell you what the skills are, or you look it up in a book, you make something up, you get the GM's approval. That is now a skill that you can do. And that skill gives you, again, if you're doing something that's related to that skill, you roll your dice pool, you get to add 1 to one of those dice because you're skilled in it.
I want a skill called Tsar Bomba. 50
Okay.
megaton nuke.
No.
Aw.
Too powerful.
You lame.
Okay, so
You're
if you
bad
find
DM.
if you find a nuclear bomb and you roll the dice for it, you're allowed to add 1 to one of those dice.
So
I want a communication skill. It's called Roger Roger.
We're talking about doing some play tests. I've had my own system in development for a while. We've alluded to them a few times on this show. I've talked about some of the challenges with mine recently. Are any of you interested in that? Like, if you are, if you're listening on YouTube, give us a comment. Let us know how you would like to get involved with that process. It's not something that's going to play out in podcast form, whether that's live streams or just sort of big brainstorming videos, or hell, maybe even getting some of you involved in actual play tests in the future. Let us know. Leave a comment on YouTube, fire us an email, podbag@nerdingundertheinfluence or podcast@nerdingundertheinfluence. I think I've got like 9 emails that all go to the same mailbox. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. Play is fun. So the next thing that we need to talk about is that, are we going to start up our game again? And are you going to DM the thing, and are we going to continue telling that story? Or am I going to start hosting an improv night?
Tanya was asking about this a couple weeks back, and again, like last night, actually. I don't object to continuing to run my game.
Don't sound excited about it, though.
No, I think it's the challenge that almost any older D&D group faces, right? Availability, just getting everybody there. You know, I don't want to be a dick about it, but we sort of ended up in a situation the last time we got our group going where it was like, there's only one day of the week that everybody is willing to commit to trying to play, and it's the one day of the week that everybody makes plans on.
Yeah.
The only option is Saturdays, and Saturdays is the day that everybody has family commitments and, you know, crafting group commitments. And again, I'm not, you know, I don't blame Cindy for being involved in that stuff. Like, that's what Saturdays are for. You know, so I don't think if as a group we're still looking at Saturday as the only option, I don't think I would want to commit to running a regular campaign, because I think that just it's going to be a lot of pick it up, put it down kind of struggle. You know, you take 2 weeks off, you come back, you know, 3 weeks later, and it's like, where were we? What were we doing?
Right.
If we, you know, and if that's all we can commit to, that's fine. I still want to play. I just think maybe the series of one shots, the smaller sort of, almost going back to the hub style thing that you were wanting to kick off, where different DMs can pick up and run a game here or there. And I certainly don't mind running stuff. It just, you know, if you can't commit to something reasonably regular, it's just hard to run like a traditional full campaign kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct.
You know, and again, you know, I'm not blaming anybody. Like I say, I don't really want to be a dick about it. It just it got tough, and because it was Saturdays, it was even tougher, because that's just the day everything naturally comes up for people. You know, it's the weekend, and it's
Their way, and traveling, especially in the summer. Summer's worse than any other time.
Yeah. So, you know, if we are open to a different day, like a weeknight, any weeknight, I could probably make it work, and I'm certainly open to running a full campaign, picking up where we left off. I threw it out in our group, like, hey, what do we want the plan to be in the fall? Like, do we want to continue what we're doing here? Do we want to try something new? Telson, do you want to pick a game back up? Because I know the reason that you stopped running the game was you were going through some job stuff, and that seems to have mostly resolved itself. So I guess that's the first question to ask. Do you want to run a game again?
I kind of do. I kind of do. I think, though, that I would like to, if I do, if everybody's cool with that, I would actually kind of like to assign some character tropes to people. Like, I would actually like to say, you know, like, you play this, and the I have some vague ideas, right? It would be an interesting way as well to flesh out and play test our world. So yeah, I think I would be open to doing that. I would like to do something a little bit more, a little bit less like super campaigny, like a little bit less. You know, okay, we're going to play these characters through the next 12 years or whatever, as opposed to, okay, we're gonna do it set in this world, and you're meeting up here for this reason. You're doing this thing. Okay, that mission is over. You know, those characters can continue, or you can swap them out. right? Like who wants to continue playing the same character, who wants to change. And if it's like, hey, one person wants to continue playing the same character, great. So here's how it works out. You have this mission, you're going to recruit some new people and train them to function as an adventuring team. Or, hey, everybody's playing the same thing. Cool, we just roll into the next thing. Yeah, so short answer, yeah, I would be open to, because I've got the creative itch, as evidenced by an hour of us talking about like my 3 bullet points of world creation. I'm not really exaggerating all that much either. I think I had like 3 or 4 bullet points of things that
Now
I
you
wanted to
waved
talk
like
about.
2 pages at me.
Yeah. Yes, they were
long bullets.
Well, it was 2 pages of double spaced, leave room to make notes. This is like, most of those bullet points were a single word, world name question mark. Still, we got a lot of mileage out of that, so it was good.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe throw it out to the group then.
Okay.
Tanya, at least, and probably Cindy will listen to this. What would you like to do? I'm totally in favor of you running some stuff. I think I agree that maybe not the campaign-y type stuff makes sense, especially if we're gonna be stuck kind of picking it up and putting it down and doing the sporadic scheduling thing.
Module level stuff.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to be kind of exploring our little world shit, and it's not going to be a campaign, that leaves it open for like me to run a few sessions here and there too, without completely breaking things, right? Like,
yes.
All right. Yeah, put it out to the group. I think we have vacation coming up, which leads basically end of October through to the 3rd of November.
Okay.
We're going down south to see the daughter and granddaughter, which sort of leads me into the next point where my Tuesday group's on hiatus for about a month. But anytime after that, I think both Tanya and I would be eager to get into something. We definitely miss getting together with our crew.
We Cindy met somebody because she was in charge of the Ameliasburg World's Fair a couple of weeks ago. And one of the people on the board is interested in playing. So I'll put it to the group as well that, hey, let's try out a new guy. Add one more person. Because I think because we have a group of what, 4?
4 now that Ian isn't playing.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'll be in a position to play for a while. So 4 was the sweet spot for me running games. I think 5 worked well with you running the game.
I think 5 is good because if somebody drops out for a week, then it's just like, okay, we'll run it with 4. When you have 4 and one drops out, running it with 3 is a little tough. So we'll try it. Who knows? Maybe he'll fit. Maybe he won't. If he doesn't fit, we'll just tell him like, hey, you're a jerk. We don't like you. Bye-bye. It's never happened to me in real life, but we'll see.
Yeah. So my Tuesday group is on hiatus for a month. A couple of my players have had some stuff going on, which has made making it out a little bit difficult for them. Completely understandable. Like, it's a game. It's not a priority over like family shit and health shit. And, with me going away, like I'm going to be in the middle of a 14-hour road trip on the one Tuesday. And then I have run my games from down there before. But the next Tuesday is Halloween, and I'll definitely be spending that with the granddaughter. So it would have made for like a 3 or 4 week block where it was just going to be spotty, where it'd be like, hey, can we do the Wednesday instead of the Tuesday or whatever? Just, let's shut it down for a month. We'll pick it up strong November
something
3rd. I don't know, whatever. That first Tuesday in November and get rolling through some campaign material, because I've actually had a few sessions now where one of my 4 has not been able to attend, and I've just been pushing through a 3, and it's actually been pretty okay. But we haven't been getting into a lot of meaty sort of campaign material and like heavy combat stuff or anything like that. It's been a lot of social encounter stuff and just sort of exploration of their own personal shit. But it's been fun.
Those are some of the best sessions you have
Yeah.
when they go well.
Having said that, in the middle of the hiatus, I wouldn't mind trying to run. It won't be on Halloween, but just a fun little short, spooky, Halloween-y one shot. Not like an open one shot like I was doing before, but just for my Tuesday group on another day. Have you ever done any seasonal stuff?
I played in a Christmas thing last year. The group that I was playing with on Sundays, we fought Krampus right before the Christmas sort of, because everybody goes on hiatus over Christmas, right? And it was interesting. I got an item out of it that was more or less. I think they have something like it in WoW, where you basically you throw a ball at somebody and they get sparkly lights and stuff and immediately start dancing.
Yeah.
It was kind of a short CC thing where it's like for 3 rounds they're unable to not dance or something like that. So yeah, it was kind of neat. And it can be, I mean, it's thematic, right? It works great.
Yeah, Halloween should be interesting because like so much D&D is just Halloween year round. So I think I'm going to lean into the sort of silly kind of thing. But I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, or if we'll even be able to line up a day. But that's what's on the agenda. So I won't have regular game updates until November.
Do we actually have a pod bag? Did Ian not send us a question?
Ian, fucker, he's giving me updates. He's touring through like Greece.
Oh, lucky
right
bugger.
now. With his new love of his life. And let me pull up the message here. Oh, it was the text message. He was in Santorini. Yeah, that's the one island there on the Aegean, Santorini, I think it is. Just getting up, one of the touristy places on a caldera, just overlooking this amazing sort of Aegean Sea. He's just like, yeah, I'm doing some invoicing and catching up. I'm in Santorini with fucker. Jealous.
Yeah, well, hey, life goals, right?
No.
I don't like leaving my house.
I love you, man. I am a little bit jealous, but no hard feelings about it. Couldn't happen to a better dude. Hope you're having a blast. But you're really slacking on this whole pod bag thing. and because of you, we don't have any content. Fuck, Carlos didn't even email me this week.
Oh man, we fell off the spam train? That's terrible.
Right?
You know what we need to do? We need to challenge our wives to ask questions.
I did. Actually, you know what? I have to give Tanya credit. And maybe we can work this into a bit of a pod bag thing.
Okay.
I was trying to come up with the idea for round 2 for the nerd fights, and I hit her about it. She was suggesting some things, and maybe this will be stuff that we explore in some future ones. The Bard thing kind of came to me, and I decided to roll with it. But she wanted us to do write our own dad jokes, nerdy dad jokes, which would be fun.
Would be.
And she had an interesting sort of thought exercise that she said she would participate in.
Oh.
I don't know how well it would work with the way we're formatting the nerd fights thing, but sort of like a Castaway style survival exercise where you're on an island by yourself and you get to do X number of things. We would sort of make our plan and establish what our preparations would be. And then she would be not randomly, she would just plan her sort of like, she would be playing God in the God simulator.
Right.
And then
we're playing Populous.
Yeah, it would basically be, okay, based on what sort of wrath she unleashes upon our poor stranded souls, who survives the best, right? Like she might unleash a tsunami or who knows what, right? And based on the preparations that we made, we would be judged on who would most likely survive the situations.
I would build my house out of bricks. Just saying.
I think you could pull that off.
I do actually know how to make bricks.
You know what? We're gonna roll parting gifts here, or not, because my sound doesn't want to play.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
We'll add it in post. I do
Fuck
have.
We'll do it live.
A YouTube channel, speaking of making bricks, that I suggest absolutely everybody watch. Now, there's a lot of these channels out there that are fake as hell, but this guy is like the OG guy doing it. The channel's called Primitive Technology. He took like a 2-year-long break while he was doing a TV show and writing a book or something. But it's literally a channel where this guy in Australia somewhere, I think Queensland area, is just out doing shit like making clay bricks and doing things like gathering iron producing bacteria to try and do smelting process to turn that into iron prills so that he can make stuff, and growing food. But he's like the OG person that really took off on YouTube doing it. Like, he's got a bajillion subscribers, so he doesn't need our help here in recommending him. But his delivery is interesting because he doesn't talk. Like, you have to turn closed captioning on, and his notes about what he's doing just appear as like closed caption text while he's just sitting there banging away, making different types of stoves and kilns and huts and tools. Everything from like stone and flint knapping to bow drills and different ways to start fires, but is mesmerizing. It is so interesting, and I've watched enough of it now that I think actually I could do all right. I mean, it was a reasonably smart dude anyway. I think I could have figured a bunch of stuff out, but I've watched enough of that stuff now that like I could lean on that for understanding.
You'd be more efficient.
Yeah. I wouldn't have to remake a lot of the mistakes other people have made. I could jump right to, hey, I know this should work. But knowing my wife, she would throw some things at us in that exercise. Like, we'd be building houses out of bricks, and she's like, yeah, but it's a 40-foot tidal wave. Why aren't you up in the trees?
The trees won't help you either. If you're not on a mountain with a 40-foot tidal wave, you're already dead. You're just dead.
And that's probably what would happen, and that'd be funny too.
Well, the point is not do you die, it's like how soon do you die. It's like a zombie apocalypse. We did that sort of thought exercise, right? Like, how long would you survive in a zombie apocalypse? How far do you think you could surf a 40-foot tsunami wave before you were dead? I think about 8 inches. I'm pretty sure, the joke about like you stand on one leg for the drunk test. It's a Ron White joke from Blue Collar Comedy. It's like you stand on one leg and count to 10. I got to whoa. Right? That's about how far I'd get surfing a tsunami before I died. I got to, okay, so I got to push up and get onto my, whoops, I'm drowned. Speaking of primitive technology, it's not really primitive technology, but it's definitely a handcraft. Have you ever watched the way that the traditional Japanese wood joinery?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that stuff is like carpentry porn.
It is so clever, and like not even just the standard sort of like furniture making kind of joinery, but like I've seen videos of guys doing just sort of complex engineering puzzles basically to build things like bridges over streams and stuff that can support the weight of like a horse, and there's no fasteners, no glue, no anything. It is just,
there might be a peg somewhere.
Yeah, but it is all wood and brain power and cleverness and tons of experience, probably passed down through generations.
To be fair, some of the wood that they use is very, very nice wood.
Oh, that's not, you know, doesn't change it for me. Like what they're doing is
No, it's
just
still amazing. I don't mean to take anything away. I'm just you couldn't, for example, cut down pine trees and do this. It wouldn't work.
no, but like it's the precision and
Yeah.
patience. Like, you know, it isn't a fast thing. Like, you know, you'll watch them do this weird sort of joint that like we don't have a name for. You know, like what do we have? Like 4 joints that we use, like
There's
between your
maybe a
miters and
half,
box, and then
maybe
basically
a
a
half a dozen.
combination of those with things stuck in the middle, right? Like
Yeah.
we,
Oh, these are like custom built things that go like, and you've got like a connection of 4 pieces of wood.
yeah,
You
and they
put
look
them
like,
together, put one pin in, and it's like stronger than the original tree.
imagine like a puzzle, like an old school puzzle, right? Funny shapes that all fit together. Now make it 3 dimensions.
Yes.
And that's basically what you have, these complex shapes that are all meant to slide into each other, but it's not just joining 2 pieces. Often it's 3 or 4, and they all kind of fill this
Yep.
space, and they're carving these shapes out just with hand tools and chisels and saws, and it is mesmerizing.
It's magic.
I'm not patient enough to ever do it.
No, me either. I
You
want to
know,
be. I mean, I would love to be.
yeah,
Maybe that needs to
I
be
you
nerd
know,
fight number 3.
I'll give me a miter joint, and maybe I'll stick a biscuit or a domino in it or something. You know, throw some dowel in it with good
I just
enough.
use
But
I just use epoxy. It's strong enough.
it is not strong enough. I've been watching, going through all the Forged in Fire. Have you ever watched that show?
No, I think I've seen like I've heard of it. I know
No.
of it. I don't think I've ever watched it.
Yeah, I mean it's like you're almost like your cooking competition style thing, but for forging blades and weapons. And I think I'm on season 8 now. I've seen
Oh
highlights
wow.
of some of the later seasons, but it's sort of the weekend, get up in the morning while Tanya's still sleeping, hang out with the dog on the couch and a cup of coffee, and knock off a couple episodes routine.
I would really, really, really love to have a forge. I'm not sure that I could physically even hammer on steel, but I'd love to have one. It's always been a dream.
Yeah, it is. It hasn't always been a dream for me, but it's been a recent one. I'm very, very quickly turning into an old man, like with an interest in woodworking and stuff that I would have laughed at myself even 8 years ago for you know, that's the stuff my grandfather did. Like you'll
Yep.
never be interested in that. You're just gonna play Baldur's Gate 17 and listen to rock and
Yep.
you know, play D&D and shit. But now I'm like, you know, I could build a table.
All of the stuff that you thought was hardcore when you were a kid is easy listening now, and it's in the classics bin for $1.99 on 8-track.
Fuck, we're old.
Yeah, getting there.
Well, hey, that's another episode wrapped up.
It's a long one.
Anybody else, since Ian's dropping the ball, if you'd like to submit a question for the pod back, we'd love to hear from you. If you have something, maybe a user recommended parting gift, we'd love to hear from you too. Email address is podbag@nerdingundertheinfluence.com. Hit us up. We're desperate.
Please God, ask us a question.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah.